Vinsmoke Judge did a bad thing. He did that bad thing to Sanji, as well as Red Sanji, Blue Sanji, and even Onion Head Sanji. Pictured here being completely uncertain as to why he exists. Good on him to join the rest of us, I suppose. But it's not what you think. Together, these Sanji plural have no idea what the full extent of Judge's madness was, as well as the hidden secret that lies within Sanji himself. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam and my genetic augmentations include the ability to walk into any room and forget why I did that. Science was not kind to me, and arguably it wasn't kind to the Vinsmoke siblings either, but at least they received all sorts of funky powers in exchange for each and every drop of their humanity. But here is the question, how did Judge make said powers? And here is the answer, vaguely defined science. But it involves a multitude of factors, some of which we're only just discovering right now in the manga. This wasn't just Judge opening up the genetic equivalent of a bag of Alan's party mix. No, he very specifically chose these powers, and each and every one of them were taken from a character in the series that we have met. And in particular, there is something extremely special about that there boy Sanji, and the only one in the world who knows about it is Judge. And me, Judge and me. And soon, you, which would make it Judge and me and you. But first, this video has been invaded by a wild dog flamingo. He says foo foo foo, and is threatening to destroy the channel unless he receives a bounty of 1,000 pats. Thankfully, for every person who subscribes as a result of this video, Dog Flamingo will receive 1 pat. So hit that wonderful button and I shall deliver this evil yet adorable boy a pat. Oh, and you'll also receive consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed. And please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new member of the Grand Fleet. Welcome. Alright, to kickstart this whole endeavor thing, we first need to establish that the Germa powers, by which I mean the biological augmentations of the Vinsmoke children, are not in fact Judge's creation. The Germa kingdom itself has existed for at least 300 years in the One Piece world and 0 years in the real world because it's fictional. However, did you know that even in the fake world of One Piece, the Germa kingdom is still fictional? They are the primary antagonists of an in-world comic titled Sora, Warrior of the Sea, which is about a young marine named Sora who fights against all sorts of evil with his smack-talking robot and trusty seagull. But the weird thing is, this comic mimics the actual Germa kingdom almost perfectly. And that's weird because the comic existed long before our current Vinsmokes did. In the One Piece world, every character from North Blue recognizes the Germa as a result of this comic, which includes well-known figures such as Straw Man, Dino Dude, and also significantly less well-known figures such as Vito from the Fire Tank Pirates, who is only known for 2 things, those things being gun and tongue, which sounds like quite the erotic mafia novella. But Vito claims to have read the Sora comic as a child, which is intriguing because he is currently 36 age units old, which is a whopping 15 years older than Sanji, and by extension Ichiji, Niji, and the other one, which I go to such great lengths to point out because I want you to understand exactly what Judge has done here. He has engineered his children in an attempt to replicate the villains from the Sora comic, kind of like a genetic cosplay. But the strangest part is that Judge also chose to marry a woman named Sora, which is the same name as the protagonist in the comic, and it's weird. It's almost as if Judge is the ultimate fanboy, tying his very existence to the fiction within fiction that is Sora, Warrior of the Sea, which is the one place where I greatly identify with Judge, having based this whole stretch of my life on One Piece and all. And if I could genetically engineer a brood of small Zoros, Zamis, and Zoni Zoppas, then I absolutely would. However, Judge actually had the means to bring his fantasy into reality, which leads to our first conclusion being that Judge created the Germa powers via extracting DNA from devil fruit users. I mean, I say DNA, this actually does have an in-world term, which is either the lineage factor or bloodline elements, depending on your translation. It doesn't matter, it's all just DNA. And this isn't particularly far-fetched because we have a confirmed example of this happening in the series before. The elusive Dr. Vegapunk was credited as having replicated the powers of Kizaru's Pika Pika no Mi in order to create the laser weaponry of the Pacifista, as well as serial Bunglenut Caesar Clown even having cracked the genetic code for creating the Zoan fruit we have at home in the Smile fruits. So genetic modification spawning from the study of fictional fruit isn't exactly unheard of. In fact, you just heard it. But how does this impact the Vinsmokes? Well, Reiju's poison pink prowess is something that could be achievable by studying Magellan's poison generation and manipulation. But just to clarify, because we always need to clarify, clarity is important, but Reiju is not a devil fruit user. She was identified as a fruit user in an issue of One Piece magazine, but that was later retconned by the Viviacard databook. So her ability to suck with 2 C's is indeed a genetic modification. Meanwhile, Ichiji's sparkling red is another power that could spawn directly from the study of Kizaru's fruit. Niji finds his electric answer in the Gorogoro Goronomi, Sanji can be assigned the classic Meromeronomi, although his original Stealth Black can also be explained with the Sukesuke-nomi. And as for Yonji, Yonji doesn't really have a special ability. His powers essentially consist of extending his right hand with cybernetic enhancements. That's it. We don't even know if he can do it with his left, just his right. And yet somehow Sanji is still considered to be the disappointing sibling in this bunch, which I think Yonji realized as a child, because this is definitely the face of, holy crap, I am so lucky this isn't me being beat up. I'm just gonna say it. Yonji sucks. With the whole devil fruit aspect, what adds more credence to this idea is that Judge was a close colleague of Vegapunk. In fact, the two of them discovered DNA as part of the same research team. So Judge is fully capable of examining the DNA of fruit users and attempting to replicate it within his own DNA, which was then inserted into his wife's DNA, and that just made a big old curly-browed mess. To state the counterpoint though, devil fruits, they're an easy answer to just about any question in One Piece. Especially this question, because there are so many powers at this point that it's really not difficult to find a fruit that acts in the same way as each of the individual Germa abilities. And that's why we have another solution. Magical fruit is great and all, but this is a world where magical powers exist sans fruit. Sans being the Latin word meaning without, and pretentious being the English word meaning guy on the internet who uses the Latin word sans. However, there are many species within the world capable of replicating Germa abilities quite naturally, such as the minx with Electro. At face value, Niji's Dengeki Blue is almost indistinguishable from this technique. In fact, the only real difference is that Niji doesn't have to don his fursuit to use it, and thus he can keep his persona under wraps. And as for Sanji, here's a bit of a spoiler warning here for anime-only watchers. If you don't like that kind of thing, then please do head to this time, wherever it is. But for everyone else, here is why Sanji is such a special boy. We have, of course, recently been introduced to the existence of Lunarians, who do the exact same thing as minks, just with wings and fire instead of fur and electricity. In fact, to this point, Queen even had a rather curious line in the manga upon encountering Sanji, which was, "Does a human burn like that? I know you ain't a Lunarian," which in terms of writing a narrative, this can be seen as pretty heavy foreshadowing for some kind of connection here. And speaking of, Sanji's mother Sora. In Japanese, Sora literally means sky. So this isn't just a one-off connection, as Sanji was quite literally splooted out of the dank birth gate of the sky. Although again, this explanation has its problems. Mostly because currently we do lack species for Reiju and Ichiji to take their powers from, and stumbling across a Lunarian may have been nigh on impossible for Judge. However, then again, King was experimented on during his imprisonment on Punk Hazard, which is the place where Vegapunk worked, and Vegapunk is the dude who Judge worked with. So it does take a few degrees of speculation, but Judge acquiring Lunarian DNA is far from impossible. But weirdly enough, we do also have a third explanation. One that was given to us by Queen actually, who had a very curious line when referring to the Vinsmoke siblings during the raid. He goes, "Mwahaha, Judge's son. I hear all of you kids are cyborgs. Is that burning leg of yours a machine part?" Which I really don't think many of us quite appreciated at the time, but this is a really odd thing to say. Queen seems genuinely convinced that the Vinsmoke children are more mechanically than biologically engineered. And to be fair, remember our disappointing friend Yonji? Well, his winch powers are clearly cybernetic in nature. Meanwhile, with Ichiji, we know for a fact that cyborgs can replicate a form of his sparkling red, not only with the Pacifista, but also with Frankie for that matter. And with Niji, well, electricity is important for cyborgs, I think. But this is also where we need to explore something a little bit different, which are the more universal Vinsmoke powers. In addition to their individual specialities, each Vinsmoke sibling was granted basic superhuman abilities, such as the defensive exoskeleton. In fact, in chapter 883, when Child Sanji punched Ichiji, it even made a bit of a gank, which is a metallic sound effect. And of course, when Yonji was put in his place by Sanji, he essentially needed his face panel beaten back into place like a car. I think that Queen was on the money here. The Vinsmoke siblings are cyborgs, just not cyborgs as we know them. Cyborgs in One Piece are traditionally big, clunky hunks of perverted speedo-wearing machinery, but what the Vinsmoke siblings display is more akin to something along the lines of nanomachines. Teeny tiny robo-things, the size of 1/1,000,000th of a meter, which could very much be responsible for the enhanced strength, speed, durability, and recovery of the Vinsmoke siblings. And this is what Judge knows that nobody else does. Sanji is a cyborg. He His body, along with the bodies of the rest of the Power Rangers, were flooded with nanomachines only Sanji's failed to activate thanks to his mother's cocktail of miscellaneous drug things, which could explain the, how shall we say, sudden changes that occur as a result of the raid suit. Because it's not necessarily purely biological, this is machines talking to one another. And Judge isn't exactly a novice with machine-based science either, given that he was the architect of the raid suits. Or was he? That's another one of those weird things. Because in the Sora comic strip, the Germa are wearing what appear to be raid suits, so they may very well have been invented prior to Judge's reign. That or Judge, like every other decision this man has made in his life, decided to imitate the comic. You know what's weirder though? The fact that every raid suit has pretty much the same design with the exception of Reiju. I mean, I can just imagine the meeting that Judge must have had with one of his engineers on this one. Alright, Your Highness, so that's 5 raid suits, each consisting of long pants, long sleeves, and a cape. Well, actually, make that 4 raid suits. I have a special design in mind for Reiju. Oh, absolutely, Your Highness. Let's hear it. So here's the concept, right? We are going to push the boundaries of science by giving her the shortest skirt that science will allow. Primarily because I plan on tattooing both of her upper thighs with the number 6. Nothing weird. It's not like I want to see her succulently modified legs. It's more of a branding thing. Oh, absolutely, sire. If you're not branding, then you're not landing. I'll make that change right away. Also, we're going to need to see her cleavage. Lots and lots of cleavage. As much as scientifically possible, really, for science. Yep, I'll add in some science cleavage. And let's also put some swirly stuff on her chest. Something to really emphasize her nipples, you know? Makes sense. I'll add in 1 order of science nipples as well. And the belly button. We really, and I cannot emphasize this enough, we need to see that belly button. So is that going to be like a branding belly button or a science belly button? Neither. This is something for Daddy Judge. Judge is like the antithesis of the father who does the old, "You are not going out dressed like that." Instead, he's more like, "You are not going out dressed." But back to reasonable things, cyborgs. This really is just speculation based on the words of an obese dinosaur. But I actually think that of the 3, Devil Fruit, Species, and Cyborgs, weirdly enough, Cyborgs is currently the one that fits best. Of course, it could also be a mixture of any 2 or even all 3. For example, Ichiji could be a modified light human, Niji could have some mink up his DNA butt, and Yonji could be a purely mechanical ass clown. But no matter what the answer is, it holds fascinating implications for Sanji. Because his abilities either spawn directly from a devil fruit used by both of Luffy's brothers, a long-forgotten race of BDSM enthusiasts, or he's just a flat-out cyborg. But as for you, well, you're still just a squishy old human. So let's vicariously live elsewhere through this next video, because there's always more to learn, explore, and experience with this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.